see with this meeting from the field? You know, why can't we participate? Why can't we see? So as I think everyone knows, the representatives on this are selected according to our administrative instruction, but there's nothing that prevents people from being able to listen in and to see. So we're going to live stream this today. Again, it's an experiment. So, you know, hopefully we won't have any glitches. We'll try to do our best and figure out, is this helpful to other people in our audience? So for those of you that may be joining us via the live stream, welcome as well. So with that, I would say we're off to a very busy school year. Would wish everyone a wonderful holiday that's upcoming here soon. I know there's lots of preparations and plans for that. For those of you that will be traveling, safe travels and enjoy for that opportunity as well. So next slide, please. So just an update on our 3 districts that we have and our staff across those 3 districts. Really no changes at this point in time over last year. So we have a veteran, if you will, staff working with all of you moving forward into this school year. So we always put this slide up just as a reminder. These are ways that our stakeholders' voices can be heard. You know, obviously at the school level, your principals have open door policies, your superintendents, community soups have open door policies. We do respond via email, typically within a 24-hour turnaround. But I guess the more of what I would call official way to hear your voice heard, I put on the screen for you. Really, all of you know that the school advisory council in every school is where each parent's voice really can make a difference. And I would encourage people to participate at that level. Sometimes we even have difficulty getting people to volunteer to be on the school advisory council. So a next level, and again, this is really not linear, which is the installation advisory council. That's an area that typically is going to be chaired by your installation commander or his or her designee. And who attends that would most likely be your principals within that complex, as well as a SAC representative from each of those different schools within the complex. So those are things that cannot be addressed at the school level, but really you need help from your installation commander. For example, you feel like you need, as a school, there's a safety issue with no designation for crosswalk, so you're going to ask to have a crosswalk painted by the command. Or you think the traffic is just overwhelming in the morning, so you're going to ask the command if they could maybe help with security forces, PMO, whatever, to be able to assist maybe in the morning, maybe even just for a week or so. The IAC is not designed to be linear to where it goes school advisory, IAC, and then district advisory. There's really not a link there necessarily to the DAC. For example, in Okinawa, because we're one island and everyone is so closely located, their district advisory council actually has military representation right there on it. And so they don't have a separate IAC here. One of the things, just as a reminder, the DOTI that actually outlined some of the requirements has been canceled. So we are working directly from the administrative instruction from DODEA at this point. So it is a little bit different now. Most locations are aware of that and have looked at that and are in line with that administrative instruction, as there is no current DOTI. So really, from the school advisory council, if it's something that cannot be addressed there, but really needs the superintendent's attention, it's going to go up to the district advisory council. And these are local issues that maybe your principal doesn't have authority over, but yet your superintendent can intervene and can assist with that. From that level, if it's something that the superintendent needs some additional support with, it comes to this meeting, the regional advisory council. So kind of big ticket items, and I will use an example of universal pre-K. You know, that was an item that came up at several of our SACs. It came up at several of our SACs that was a need for families. It went up through the district advisory council. It came up here to the region. Again, I don't have the authority to personally fund that. But then we elevated that to the deck from the region. And the deck is really the highest level, and the deck is chaired by the Undersecretary of Personnel and Readiness. The secretary of the deck is actually the DODEA director, who is now Dr. Beth Narvez. And around that table are all general officers and flag officers representing from around the world. And they also, their representatives can elevate agenda items to the deck, and also from the RAC, we can elevate items to the deck. So UPK elevated to the deck. It had elevated in years past, and we were not able to get funding for it, but last year the time was right, and we had a lot of interest at the Pentagon level and in the White House to support UPK. And so working through that level, $63 million was authorized to support UPK. And as you know, a good news story here, within all of our schools in the Pacific, every one of our elementaries has universal pre-K. So your voice is heard, and it can be heard throughout all of those different areas. And that is really the official communication channel, if you will. As I mentioned earlier, many other informal communication channels available too. Next slide. So we want to certainly take an opportunity to welcome Dr. Beth Narvez. Many of you know Beth. She started her DODEA career out here in the Pacific. She was with us for 3.5 years as our inaugural Chief of Instructional Leadership. Did a great job of getting that program off the ground. Went on up to headquarters as the Chief Academic Officer, and now has been promoted to our Director. So we were very excited to host her here. You can see the picture there in front of you. She actually did a visit to Guam. We've got lots of changes in Guam. So as Director, Guam was her first location to visit within the Pacific region. So very excited to have her on board. We had a great visit in Guam, and she was brought up to speed quickly about all of the proposed changes that we're seeing there. Next slide. So Dr. Narvez's focus really is continuing along the same lines as her predecessor, Mr. Tom Brady. 3 areas that she is wanting all of us to focus on. The first one is multi-tiered system of support. Long name, but basically means we want to meet the needs of every student, and with a very heavy emphasis on core instruction, making sure that core instruction for every student is rigorous and rich and designed to meet their needs. The second one I just touched on, which was to expand pre-K to all DODEA schools. I will mention that I think it's 80 of the 90 schools have universal pre-K. In the Pacific, every school has it. In Europe and in the Americas, they had a couple locations that actually will require a MilCon project to create additional spaces. I know, for example, I think Ramstein and Kaiserslautern do not have universal pre-K because they did not have facilities. But we were very fortunate here to do that. And I think, honestly, our command was so supportive. I can't imagine any location that if I had said, we need help with space, I think our command would have stood up and said, we are here to support, because this really is a recruiting tool for families. It's a quality of life issue for families. So we were very excited to be able to offer that this year. And I would be remiss in not thanking all of our district superintendents, their staff, our principals, our logistics folks here in my office, out in the field, that worked diligently all summer long to make sure that all those classrooms were outfitted appropriately. There was a tremendous amount of materials that were purchased to support those classrooms, and our teachers have done an amazing job in moving forward and getting that program off the ground. So thanks to everyone. It was truly a team effort. And the last one, I think, is one that many of our families have noticed a difference. I know I certainly have. is to ensure a highly qualified educator in every classroom through what they're calling the teacher hiring project. And that really came about, again, your voice was heard, as well as our educators' voices about our concerns with the amount of time it was taking to get teachers hired. What we discovered was that in some cases, 6 to 9 months to get someone in the classroom. And so we were having to start out our school year with many long-term subs, way too many than what we should have had. And it just wasn't acceptable. Headquarters acknowledged that, so they did several things to address that concern. Actually, they were able to hire 8 additional personnel security people to help expedite getting people's fingerprints processed. We moved the hiring timeline back to where we're now starting our hiring process at the beginning of February. In fact, we're getting ready now to start hiring for next school year. As another part of that, we examined some other pieces of teacher hiring, and we found out licensure was problematic for us. We were having many applicants, including many military spouses that were fully licensed in their state, but yet would come to us and we would say they weren't qualified and need extra coursework. So that has been changed, and we now honor every license from every state with full reciprocity, which also aligned to the Secretary of Defense's initiative to make sure we support military spouses with licensure reciprocity. So some really good work has come out of that teacher hiring project. Most importantly, we started this school year, 95% of all of our classrooms across the region were fully staffed with a fully qualified teacher. And you're going to hear a little bit more about that as we progress in the slides. So universal pre-K, again, I've already touched a little bit on this, but just a couple highlights. We are assisting with the transportation of children if they are outside or within or further from a mile from the school location. In many cases, the CDC is right next door. We're able to walk children back and forth between the CDC and our school. We made sure that the length of the school day mirrors the school day for the rest of the children within that K-5 building. Many of you may be familiar with the former Sure Start program, which is the same curriculum that is in our universal pre-K, but that program typically released an hour earlier to support teachers with preparation and lunch times. So now they do go a full day, the same as the rest of the students. Every classroom has a teacher and a paraprofessional aide. As I mentioned, we use what's called creative curriculum. It's a nationally recognized curriculum that's used in many preschools throughout the states. We do require family style dining within the program. For family style dining, the meals are served in large serving bowls. It's really to help teach children, how do you behave at the table? How do you say please and thank you? How do you pass food? So it's really considered an instructional component of that preschool program. Families pay for the lunch. It's the same cost, just as if they were buying a lunch for the rest of their children. But they cannot pack their lunch because, again, it is a part of the curriculum to learn how to handle food at a table in that type of setting. Now, we do have exceptions. You know, if the child has a note from a doctor saying there's a medical need or there's severe allergies, we do look at those exceptions case by case. There is a rest time built into the schedule, and it's a voluntary program. You know, some families don't choose to participate in that. We also had some questions early on about, well, could I bring my child on Monday and Wednesday because I want to take them to ballet and library time on the other days? And unfortunately, we cannot facilitate that. The program is spiral. It's built Monday to the next. So children are required to, if they want to participate, they have to participate at a full-time basis. Next slide. So just to give you an idea of some enrollment, and the photo that you actually see there, we had a very exciting first day at Yokosuka Primary School. And you can see that we had our ambassador to Japan, Mr. Emmanuel, is there at the table with one of our pre-K teachers. What we discovered, he actually had been a former pre-K teacher himself, so was very passionate about the program and extremely comfortable being there with students. So you can see our numbers so far with Pacific East, Japan, Okinawa, and Korea, as well as Guam. And so a little under our projected total, which frankly we expected, because not every parent wants to put their child in universal pre-K, but it's available for those that do. Our projected totals were based upon what we had projected for kindergarten. And really, as we had anticipated, a little bit under that. So probably we will be adjusting those projections for next year. Next slide. So some of the challenges that we have or have had is just that request for busing. For this year, we did do some exception to policy, but it will only be for this current school year with busing that is within the walking zone. And honestly, that problem was really only a problem in most locations. And then the family style dining, we have heard from some families that they don't like it, that they feel their children don't want to eat the food and they want to be able to pack their lunch. And again, for the reasons I've just provided, that's not an option. I will say another intent of all of this is really helping children try different foods. So when they see their friends around the table that are trying something that maybe they hadn't had at home or they think they don't like, when they see their friends eating it, a lot of times that encourages children to eat some different foods that they may not have typically have tried in the past. Photo there, you can see General Rupp at Yokota greeting our universal pre-K students on the first day of school at Mendel Elementary. Next slide. So we'll switch gears here a little bit, going from our youngest learners to our high school age learners. And of course, one of the things that we know is so important for our schools is to have high standards and to make sure our curriculum is rigorous and preparing our students to be successful in college or career or wherever their life journey takes them. And so we really encourage our students to take advanced placement courses. We offer a number of advanced placement courses in person, of course, varying by size of school. But overall, I believe there are over 30 courses that can be taken. And if it's not offered face-to-face, students also have the option of taking it virtually, which again is really helpful in some of our smaller schools where we can't offer as many courses face-to-face. So one of the things that the college board is who creates the AP testing, just like they manage SAT testing. And so they decided they wanted to find a way to recognize schools of excellence. So the first year that this came out, which would have been 2 years ago, all of our schools were on what's called the AP honor roll. And that honor roll has awards basically in 4 categories. You can either be rated bronze, silver, gold, or platinum. So the first year in the Pacific, all of our schools were on the honor roll. And in fact, worldwide in Dodea, I think they were all on the honor roll except one, which had less than 10 students. So they weren't able to qualify for that reason. And you can see what are the things that they look at. So they talk about culture, credit, optimization, but one of the standards, for example, is the percentage of students that scored 3 or higher. And that means that for most colleges, if you score 3 or higher, then you are able to get credit for a course. And of course, that's money savings for families because then they don't have to pay for that course. In addition, Dodea actually pays for all the AP tests that students take, which most states do not offer that for students. So for this school year, we even saw an increase. So additional celebration, all of our schools in the Pacific were either gold or platinum, and 6 of our schools increased their rating over the year. So we're very proud of that. I think too, when I first heard about this, I wondered, well, is this like a participation prize? Does just everybody get recognized on this honor roll? But actually only 30% of schools stateside high schools are recognized through the honor roll system. So it really is something to be proud of. It is a high achievement for our schools. And you can see their ratings there on the screen. Next slide. So in addition to the honor roll, the College Board also recognized students with Student Scholar Awards. So you can see there, the AP Scholar Awards have increased in the Pacific over the past 3 years, with the last year of having 570 students with awards. So I think that again is another bullet point that we're quite proud of. And you could see that 9 of our high schools actually increased the total number of awards that were granted to their students. Next slide. So this slide just tells you what are the different areas that are recognized with these scholar awards. So you can see capstone diploma, seminar and research certificate, and an international diploma. And down the side, it gives you a little bit of information about what it takes to be able to earn those. These are not easy awards to get. Students really are working very hard academically to be able to achieve these high standards. Next slide. So of course, we wanted to talk a little bit about graduation. We think about, gosh, it's only November, but frankly, graduation is truly right around the corner. And for each of our schools, they have their own, kind of their own way of celebrating their graduations. But when you look across our statistics, our statistics are quite impressive. So graduation rate of 99.83%, 723 students going to college. The amount of scholarship dollars to me is amazing. Over $26 million, $28 million. Academy appointments, the number of students enlisting, and the number of students that receive ROTC scholarships. So again, we want our students to be ready for whatever it is they choose to do after they leave our high school. Next slide. So I talked a little bit earlier about the teacher hiring project, the importance of that, and the improvements we've seen. So what you can see from the statistics here, overall in Dodea, it was 95%. But here in Pacific, even a little bit higher than that with each of our districts. And again, this could not have happened without the amount of attention our superintendents and principals and staffs have put into really making sure that we have teachers in place. I would tell you we have added where our teams have weekly meetings where they track every vacancy in the school. We now have a dashboard where we can see when was the teacher selected, what is the vacancy, when were they selected, where are they at in the process, have they had their fingerprints done? And if we see a time gap in any of that, it's the opportunity then for our staff to reach out directly to that applicant and say, hey, we don't have your fingerprints. What can we do to help you? I will just make one comment. Again, I think these are great statistics. We are going to continue to work to make them even better. But I think too, there is a reality. There will always be a time that your child may have a long-term sub. I think as everyone is aware, just as the military has paid parental leave, so do we. So anytime somebody has a baby, they're going to be out for 12 weeks. And if their spouse happens to work for us, they're going to be out 12 weeks too. We have folks that have medical issues. We have a teacher that has cancer. They're going to go back to the States more than likely to get treatment. So you're going to have a long-term sub in. So we know there's always going to be some, but we want to make sure as much as possible that we do have that certified teacher in the classroom. So again, just talking a little bit about how our students perform. This information that you see here is also displayed on our schools at a glance. Several years ago, I had parents and senior leaders asking me, we know that our Dodea schools are good. Everyone tells us that, but how do we really know how they compare? And based upon meetings that I had with senior spouses as well as military, we created the schools at a glance to give parents for our middle schools and high schools, how do our kids perform? So we've shared just a couple of those components here with you today. If you go to the schools at a glance for your particular school, you will see a full comprehensive report. But for example, what you see here is the PSAT, which we actually use too as a data point for us in looking at school improvement. So you can see how our students do in reading and writing, how they do in math. And our Pacific region scores are the bar to the far right in the light yellow color. And in almost every case, except every case but one, you can see that our students not only outperform the nation, but outperform Dodea as a whole. We're always looking to do better. And I would just say to you in the graph, you do have to note, although the bars seem big, there's really not as much difference, I guess, between the bars. And that's why we've got the numeric scores also written over the top. But again, very proud of this. Our teachers at our school level, we kind of tear this data apart, take a look at where our kids do well, where can we help them. But we also know that PSAT, which can earn a child an opportunity to be a National Merit Scholar, but also SAT, many times those are gateways into the college of your choice. During COVID, we didn't see as much emphasis on the SAT, but it appears that universities now are looking a little bit more at those scores again. Next slide. So again, we've provided you some additional information about AP scores, which gives you the percentage of students that scored a 3 or higher. Again, comparing the Pacific, the far right bar to Dodea as a whole, and also to the nation. So as you can see, our students perform very well. Next slide. So I wanted to put this slide up here because we over the years continue to get questions about middle school sports. What can we offer? What is the policy? Why do we do what we do? And so what I wanted to include for you is that middle school sports are really the responsibility of the installation. It is supported, it's funded by MWR, Youth Sports, so they're the primary facilitator for middle school sports. They're skills-based and they are for students at levels appropriate to the size of the installation. So it can look different in different locations. So we do have a caveat within our athletic guide that does allow 7th and 8th grade students to practice with high school teams in non-contact sports, as long as there is approval from both the school principals. And on the right, I know it's small, but that's just a copy of the letter that has been signed by Dr. Narvez. It's really the same letter that Mr. Brady had signed about middle school sports, where the talking points are really what I've just covered for you at the left. I will say, though, one of the things that I have talked about with our superintendents and with some of our commands is that there is an opportunity for us to partner with MWR or Youth Sports. All of our schools have extra duty assignment dollars for after school clubs, and those are based on student interest. So it's not unusual to have a middle school volleyball club or a middle school running club or a middle school basketball club. And our coaches then are paid for out of those extra duty dollars, which, for youth sports, typically those coaches are volunteers, and sometimes that's hard to recruit coaches. There is nothing that prevents a partnership between, let's say, our volleyball club and youth sports. If youth sports can provide the transportation for us to do an after-school competition with a local team, or with our host nation team, or to actually bring some of those teams onto our installation. We just are not authorized to pay any money for officials or for transportation or uniforms. But I think those partnerships can be powerful. And I know, for example, in the Kanto Plain area with Dr. Ferguson, she's already been working with the installation command to start to do some of those partnership opportunities. One of our challenges, of course, with sports is for some of our locations, they're so far away that it requires overnight travel, which we just cannot do for middle school students. So I really look forward to seeing what some of the partnerships can look like and creating maybe some additional opportunities for our middle school students to actively participate in a middle school sports program. Next slide. So I've already talked a little bit about this particular topic when we talked about teacher hiring. But just again, a good news story with spouse license reciprocity, not just for spouses, for anyone that applies to work in Dodea. We honor their license from whatever state. And that's done really a couple things for us. It, of course, has helped our military spouses as they move from location to location to be able to have opportunity to teach for DODEA. But it's also greatly increased our applicant pool. So for example, when we had to hire all those additional universal pre-K teachers, we had a much bigger pool to move or select from because we had more people that actually qualified to be able to teach in those areas. Next slide. So accelerated withdrawal. This topic I know came up when I met with the SAC when I was visiting up at OSAN. And it's a very structured opportunity. It's an opportunity that I would say the majority, if any, public schools don't provide this. But because we know that our families have orders, our students can't control that. We allow up to 20 days of flexibility with orders that will allow a student to complete their coursework. And you can see it's not intended for convenience of family travel, visits, or other discretionary reasons. You have to have, those orders with a date on it that shows that you are required for the mission to have to leave. And it does apply for civilians. That had been an issue earlier. It does apply to civilians as well as to active duty. You have to remember that our principals are basically saying your child has completed all required coursework for that school year, even though they've left early. So that's why there's really no wiggle room on that 20-day limit. Because if it's more than that, it's pretty hard to justify that they've actually completed everything if they're gone for longer than that 20 days. So you can see the accelerated withdrawal dates that are up there. I know we had a proposal again from the OSAN SAC to look at, could there possibly be some other reasons other than just that PCS date? And so I agreed that I would elevate that to our headquarters for further discussion. Because again, the accelerated withdrawal policy is not created at the region level, it is created at the headquarters level. But I will elevate the concern that was brought to me by the OSAN SAC.
And Ms. Rath, you did mention about civilians are eligible for this as well. That's just another example of how the RAC works, because it was here in the Pacific RAC where that issue was brought up to us. We elevated it. And then the issuance and the guidance has changed to now incorporate civilians and not just our military members. So just another example to show how this process works.
Thank you, Mr. Schlitz. Good point. All right, next slide. So we always want to look at how do we make sure we address the needs of the whole child. So this is something that we categorize as student resiliency, really making sure that our students are able to be successful in all areas. And so one of the things, and we are very thankful to our Navy partners, they said, we think you could use some more help in schools. We know one of the areas of concern for active duty as well as for students, of course, is mental health. And so Navy has agreed, and we're finishing the MOA now. The launch, I'm thinking, is going to be probably in December, to where the Navy is going to provide a counselor or a social worker that can work directly within our middle schools and high schools in Navy connected installations. So for us, it would be at E.J. King, Kinnick High School, Yokosuka Middle School, and what you don't see on the slide, it's also at Guam High School as well as McCool Middle School. So it will impact all of our Navy locations. And actually the work that we're doing here in the Pacific is also going to be informing the same program that Navy will support in Europe. So this is it's a big deal that the Navy is going to reach out and provide this for us. So the counselors will be embedded in the school, but as you see the last bullet, it's just as if you would take your child to Fleet and Family. So it requires parent permissions, all the same kind of things that would be provided if the parent was taking them to the Navy location. But by embedding it in the school, it just gives easier access to those counselors. And those counselors also can serve as advisors to our staff, when they meet together to talk about possible suggestions and solutions working with students. So we are excited about this partnership. As many of you are aware, we have our ASAC counselors that work with alcohol and substance abuse and other mental health issues that are provided by military in many of our high schools. We have MFLEC counselors that are also provided by the military. So this is just one more layer that the Navy has stepped forward and said, we want to make sure we're there to help. So thank you to the Navy for that, and more to follow on this initiative as we see it be implemented in our schools. Next slide. So I mentioned this to you earlier, the schools at a glance. And so you can see here, there is a lot of information now that is available at families' fingertips. There are links for this on each of the schools' websites, as well as the district. At the region, you can actually pull down multiple if you want to look at just different schools comparing across the Pacific, and you can pull them down there. Again, these data points were based upon requests that I received from our stakeholders. I will say that DODEA has created something similar, or started to, in what they're calling school excellence reports. Those are also available online, but right now they are just in phase 1 of that. And the information is pretty limited on those. It's not near as much as what we provided with the schools at a glance. So there's actually 3 phases of the implementation of the DODEA school excellence reports. So once the excellence reports kind of catch up with what we're offering at schools at a glance, we'll retire the schools at a glance, and DODEA-wide, the excellence reports will be available. I have asked different meetings that I've been at with parents, asking for parents that would like to volunteer to help create a framework for an elementary schools at a glance. At our elementary level, we don't give any nationally normed tests the way we do for middle high, like PSAT, like SAT, like AP. But there certainly are other data points that we can share with families that I think would be of interest. So that's a project that I'm going to lead here in the region. So any of you that may personally be interested or would know someone that would be interested, please don't hesitate to reach out to me. And you can see this next slide where the contact is my executive assistant, who her email is there for you, Ms. Calzada, that will help put together that team that can be providing some feedback. So again, we want to hear what our stakeholders have to say, and this is a request that came from our stakeholder group. Next slide. So again, in hopes of continuing to get feedback from our stakeholders in the field, we had a stakeholder feedback survey that was provided. I know in the past there's been some frustration by families. It seems like it's been hit or miss when this has been sent out from headquarters, but Dr. Narvez is committed to doing this on a more regular basis. And I would just ask Miranda, who's our PAO, any other information you have on the stakeholder feedback survey at this time?
I don't have any more at this time.
So I think more to follow. And then typically what you'll see is a summary of that, because then people say, well, if we did the survey, well, what did it say? So that information too is typically posted. Now it'll be pulled down when they have new survey results up there. So I think at this point, I know you checked. There's some on the next slide. So
Summary.
So summary, going on to the next slide. These were some key findings. It just says most students felt safe, because that's one of the questions. Your children feel safe in schools and around the school area. What about trust between students and teachers? Now, interestingly, it says about half the students reported lower academic engagement in math classes. So that's one of the things that we have continued to support, is making sure that our math classes have the rigor and the right instruction. And then it talked about real life math applications are rare, although students understand teachers' expectations for their performance. So I think it's helping students understand, how does math relate to their everyday lives? And, I think sometimes we do a lot of that at the elementary, or we have them walk around the school and identify shapes that they see. But I think sometimes for our high school age students, well, how does Algebra 1 really relate to what they do every day? And so I think that clearly is something that we need to work on as we work with our students. Next slide.
In this wrap, one thing I want to mention is when we go up to the next stakeholder feedback survey, we're going to reach out to all of you to help get that message out, because we definitely want to hear feedback, not only from the students, the parents, and the entire community, because that's how we can improve and make things better. Sure.
Thank you, Todd. And I won't go over all these one by one, because you can read them too. But I think what's interesting is that overall, people are happy with what's provided for students, but yet it says they feel like there's a low level of parent participation in school activities. And I think what we tend to see is at the elementary, we have a lot more participation. And then I think as kids get older and there's more and more options and choices for activities outside of school, parents are torn in so many different ways. How do we continue to encourage parents to be able to be active at the school, at the middle and high school levels? So again, there are some things that are celebrations that we see here, but there are also some things that we could do better on. So as we get this information and we get the survey, I want people to know that we do take it seriously. We are sharing it, and we are working with our schools in these areas. Next slide. So I wanted to share this. I think this actually came out of the National Defense Authorization Act, where this is where it is actually funded from. And this was a request to expand a program which we call E2P2, which probably doesn't mean a whole lot to you, but you can see where the E2P2 comes from with expanded eligibility and pilot program. But what it does now, it is only open to active duty military high school dependents. So this one is not open to civilians. And this is basically how it's written into the NDAA authorization, which is, considered a law. So you have to be a 9 through 12. And what it is, it's for students that leave DODEA, for example, and you go to another stateside school and they don't offer a course that your child would need possibly for graduation or to continue their career path. For example, they don't offer the foreign language. You were taking Japanese 1 at Yokota, but they don't offer it when you move to Oklahoma. So it would allow you to take that, or your child to take that at no cost. So I think we're starting to see more and more interest in this program. I just think we have to get the word out that it's available. So I felt like this was a good audience to share this information with. And you can see on here, there's actually where if you have questions, and it just goes to e2p2@dodea.edu if you have any kind of specific questions about this program.
That's through the virtual school.
It is through our virtual school, yes. And we have actually, the Pacific Virtual School Hub is located here in the region office, but the virtual school has expanded so much, DODEA worldwide, that our teachers that are assigned here to the Pacific actually support students all over the world. Next slide. So just wanted to take an opportunity and recognize some of our, what I'll call is our region leaders with our Principal and Teacher of the Year awards. You can see Mr. Dwayne Jefferson at Sullivan's was the Principal of the Year for the Pacific. And then for each of the districts, they also have Teachers of the Year that were selected. We have Ms. Barbara Hertz, Mr. Michael Callahan, and Mr. Edward Rossi. All have been identified throughout our regions and had the opportunity to compete for that position for overall for DODEA. They're actually in the process right now already of selecting new candidates for this school year. Next slide. So one of the things that I think our students enjoy most are our Far East programs. And we have both Far East in athletics and we have them in academics. Our Far East programs are actually managed within the Pacific region. And I think Mr. Tom McKinney is here with us. He is actually our coordinator for our Far East athletic program. You can see on the left, we have some of our fall Far East events listed. Tom, anything you would add?
No, I mean, all the kids enjoy going to Far East. We try to make it challenging to the students they learn while they're there. They can meet other students and carry on as they go out of high school. They still, stay in contact with each other. We just make it the best we can to be like a stateside experience. We do what we have here. We try to get local teams involved, so it's not always there'll be a team in the event. And this year, cross country was able to take on the Asian Pacific Games. It's normally in Guam. This year happened to be in Chiba, so we were able to tie in our day race with the other schools around Asia. So our schools got to see other kids and how they race.
Thank you, Tom. I have to say, as I mentioned earlier, I think it's one of the most popular programs that we have with students. And they love the opportunity to travel, to get to see, their friends, peers, and other locations. And again, when we can, just as Tom mentioned, that opportunity to actually be able to combine with the Asia Games. I don't think there's too many children in the States that could talk about that type of international opportunity.
And Ms. Wrap-Up note, you can see the little sentence down there, but we are doing a pilot program for girls wrestling here in Pack South. They did have an update meeting yesterday to kind of talk about it. How did that go? How's it going so far?
Currently, Canadian and Kentucky both have about 13 girls involved. So they had their first match the other day, and there were 11 bouts. So, I mean, it is growing. They are adding more girls to the program. They're not just gonna say, no, you can't join because they want the program to grow. So then, in Contour area, there's ASIJ, CAJ, SACEN do have girl teams. So this year, they're gonna have a Beast of the East that's gonna happen at St. Mary's. Dina Kusaki will go there. And then Kadena is hosting the Rumble on the Rock, and then those 3 girl teams will come here. So that will give them competition. And hopefully this can spread across the rest of the city.
And so we're gonna take this pilot, see how it plays out this year, and hopefully expand it throughout the entire Pacific. And if you want to know more about it, there's a really good article in Stars and Stripes today about the pilot program here in the Pacific.
Thank you, Mr. Schlitz. Thank you, Tom. And I would say too, we try to be responsive to requests from our students. This actually grew out of a request. And, we do make changes across our programming based upon what students say they would like to do. I know at one point, we actually had boys volleyball, and they had a team at Sasebo because they don't have enough students to be able to support football in Sasebo. And, that was successful for several years. And then as students changed and moved on, there wasn't enough interest any longer. But we do want to make sure we're responsive to what students are asking.
And that also includes esports.
That's right, we do. And, as we've talked about with esports, we are the only region in Dodea that actually offers that program. So we're quite proud of that. And many students participate in that, and that seems to fill a need for some students that maybe don't quite fit into other areas of athletics. And they can earn a varsity letter for esports just like they can in any of our other sports programs. So in addition to athletics, we also focus on academics. So you can see here for fall semester, what were some of the academic programs that we had? Journalism, music, creative expression, and we also have our Far East coordinator for that here in this office. So Blake, anything you would add for that?
The students are actually traveling home today from Oakland hosting the jam, which went really well. We're prepping for creative expression, which starts in about 2 weeks. That's one of our premier events. And then we're also coordinating the big change this year with the government simulation to Yelp. And the SLO in Singapore has been really helpful, helping coordinate find hotels and lodging for our students that are traveling in March for that.
All right, thank you. So these programs too change and evolve based upon what we see from student interest. But you can see, for our Spark event, 110 students, journalism, 114, the JAM event, 73, creative expression, 78. So we do have a lot of interest in our academic programs as well. Next slide. And then, of course, we have Far East JROTC. We said farewell to our former coordinator that we had here, Lieutenant Colonel Norris, had been with the Pacific for quite some time. We're welcoming Lieutenant Colonel Fields here to continue the legacy of excellence that we have in our ROTC programs. You can see in the fall, we had drill, leadership academy, community partnerships are listed. Lieutenant Colonel Fields, anything you would add?
Ma'am, I'd just like to, say kudos to the SLOs that really came through, for the parties really event the week that was hosted here at Kadena High School. Because they reached out to the community, to the units, and we had a lot of good unit support with respect to our judges. So great job there. We want to continue that dialogue and that relationship as well.
Thank you, sir. Next slide. So one of the things that we also take pride on is our DODEA facilities. Having been in the public schools for 23 years, our facilities truly are second to none. We have a lot of brand new facilities. In addition to that, we work hard to maintain our current facilities to make sure that they are providing the type of environment that our students need and our parents expect. Next slide. So this just gives you, talks a little bit about our facilities by the numbers. So in the Pacific, we actually have 46 schools. So over the next 6 years, we have $292 million worth of construction that's planned. We have 5 new facilities that are under construction, and we've constructed 14 facilities within the past 6 years. So you can see that this is a very robust program. Within my office, we have a facilities chief who actually supervises the program and has district and school level leaders with facility operations specialists, other facility specialists that help to make sure that not only do we have our new construction closely monitored, but making sure that all of our schools are getting the attention they need and deserve. Next slide. So here's some MILCON projects, which is military construction that are currently undergoing. So we've completed Killen Elementary School. That was a phased project. That one had some challenges because we were having to maintain students in the old school as we built the new school right next door, but it is complete and moving along well. The Pacific East District Office Building, that's a building that's been a long time coming. The old office building, I think, was one of the oldest buildings on Yokota Base. We laughed at, when I was there as superintendent, we called it the Quonset hut. It was so small that the district office is currently spread across several different locations. The Quonset hut was torn down, and so building on that site, and in the meantime, I certainly applaud our district office in Pac East, who has been housed in one of the wings of the Yokota West Elementary School building, but is also housed in several other buildings across the installation. So this will allow all of the superintendent's team to be back under one roof, which certainly makes sense and will help that team be even more efficient and effective. You can see that one is slated to be finished, not too far in the future, looking at this June. So high school for Kinnick is also under construction. That one has been a long time coming as well. I've been down there to visit the site several times. It is moving along very well. And you can see it's slated to be completed in October of 26. Another big win for that particular facility is that across the street in what is known as Briggs Bay, we are also funding a huge athletic complex. So there is a field house, a football field, a track. There'll be tennis courts, basketball court, baseball diamond, softball diamond. That, of course, will be an asset to our schools, but also will support some of the other programming within that Yokosuka community. And then lastly, you see on there, Bechtel Elementary, we're right now in the midst of that renovation. It's partly renovation, partly a new build, and it's due to be done in July of 27. And a real thank you to our Pac South team, our SLOs. We're using Ryukyu Middle as well as Kadena Elementary as swing space for our Bechtel students. So they've had a bit of a bus ride during this construction. And we just appreciate our parents too and their support as we've had this transition as we will be preparing to open that new Bechtel school. Next slide. So these are just some other projects. You know, we talked about the fact not only do we build new, but we have to maintain what we have. So one of the things we know very clearly is that our Humphreys location continues to grow and expand. And our high school now is up to over 800 students. And when it was built with 2 serving lines in that school. It was a host nation build. But for some reason, the second serving line is somewhat walled off. So we have a project now to be able to open up that second serving line to better facilitate our students' needs at Humphrey High School. At Daegu, or Middle High, even though that's one of our newer schools, 21st century build, it was built without a culinary arts lab. It's our only school in the Pacific that does not have the culinary arts program. So we've made that a priority to open that Daegu Culinary Arts Project and get that going there. At Anderson in Guam, we're always dealing with HVAC modernization and updates due to the fact that HVAC runs in Guam 24/7. So you can see we have a chiller repair and construction with a full replacement mod awarded. Edgren High School at Middle High, replacement for a new track. The first bid that we got on that was way over our programmed amount, so we're working with the installation to redo that so that we can get that track replacement. Also up there in the north at Solars, it is our only school that does not have air conditioning. And that's because when that school was built, the DoD construction guide did not allow for air conditioning in that region. We know that the temperatures have gotten warmer and warmer there. So we do have an HVAC project in the design phase there. And a big thank you to our installation leaders at Misawa. They really helped us this year with a temporary unit fix with air conditioning that allowed us to keep our schools open and comfortable at the beginning of the school year. At Zama, they are renovating the culinary arts lab, getting close to done there. We're very excited. You can see the date that's there, so we're just finishing up now. They were using an old home ec room, and so now it's back to where we need it to be. And you can see Kadena High School floor replacement is complete. So those are just some of our major projects that our team has been working on here to make sure our schools have what they need. Next slide. So these are some that we are programming and planning. You can see Shirley Lanham at Atsugi, modernization project. Kubasaki High School, that's one we've been waiting on for a while here. In the meantime, at Kubasaki, we actually have spent a substantial amount of money, over $1 million, just making sure that, again, it's the current Kubasaki meets the needs of our students. But the new school, you can see we've got a target award of July of 25. So the design is complete. We are moving forward with that. We also have an Osan Middle High modernization project for Guam because we have expanded population there. We have one large temporary building that will house 250 students that will be on the grounds at the current Guam High School to help as a stopgap measure as the military continues to look at what facilities will be needed on the island to make sure they can support the additional missions that will be coming there. And then you can also see at Anderson Elementary and Anderson Middle, they did some structural refit to make sure that it was appropriate for any type of seismic issues that could be available there. So that temporary solution, we've gotten approval to extend that moving forward. And it will be examined and recertified on a yearly basis to make sure that it is maintaining what needs to be happening there. Next slide. So in addition to what we support out of military construction and out of local DODEA dollars, we also have some projects that are funded by our host nation. So you can see a new transportation office at Ikego, Lester Middle School here in Okinawa. Once that is built, of course, the current Lester Middle School would be closed, and we actually will have a full PK-12 education opportunity on Camp Foster. Humphreys East Elementary, when I was there visiting, I was able to see where that project is at right now. You can see where its estimated opening is the school year 26-27. And then the Daegu Elementary School will be built right on Camp Walker in an area officially called Camp Oscar, but it's on Walker. And what that will do is allow families to have a one-stop PK-12 opportunity right on Camp Walker, and there will not be that need to bus to Camp George. Next slide. So as I mentioned earlier, we've had a lot of activity in Guam. That was one of the reasons the director made the visit to Guam at this point in time. So the annex for McCool Elementary, they're finishing the punch list items, planning on a winter break move-in. That's a big thanks to our Navy partners who paid for that retrofit, which will give us, space for a little over 200 additional students there. And that opens up elementary space in McCool for additional students that are oncoming. Talked a little bit already about the temporaries that would be built will be stood up at Guam High School, one large building. They are concrete. They're considered what are called tilt-up buildings. They're not what we sometimes think of as temporaries, as, kind of the sheet metal things. Those just wouldn't hold up at Guam. So that will provide, again, a stopgap measure as we look at supporting the mission with our families in Guam. Next slide. All right, so I've done a whole lot of talking. I'm anxiously looking forward to the second half when other people can talk. And so 5-minute break. Thanks, everyone.
Hey, Eriko, this is Dr. Sherwood, just checking to see if you can hear me. And it looks like by your response you can, so ready to go. Thank you.
Great, so yeah.
All right, well, welcome back, everyone. We'll be moving to our updates from our districts as well as from our school liaison officers and any issues that have risen to their level via our school advisory committee. So starting off, we have got Pacific West with Dr. Sherwood.
Yeah, good morning, everybody. I am Dr. Jacob Sherwood, the superintendent for the Pacific West schools. That includes the 8 schools in Korea and 4 schools in Guam. I'm going to highlight just a couple of pictures per slide. I don't want to take a bunch of time from everybody this morning, but that top left picture, pre-K, I think is definitely worth noting. As was stated before, we had about 400 students enter our hallways for the very first time in their lives, I hope, and fill our spaces. And it's just been a wonderful opportunity to serve the littlest military connected students thus far. We've had a few challenges along the way, but I think all of those we've been able to take care of locally. I think that is a huge success to our SAC teams who so long ago pushed that issue up. Now we're seeing the fruits of those labors. So a big thank you for the partnership with our SACs there. The other one I wanted to highlight is the bottom right picture. We continue to work with our host nation here in Korea to honor and recognize the talents and efforts of all students. This event here is specifically something like you would see in a Special Olympics event that I think we all hold near and dear to our hearts. So great opportunity to partner with them, the local school leaders, as well as our command teams, our school administrators, parents, and then on behalf of those students where they get to be celebrated for their successes and efforts. All right, let's go to the next slide. The top left picture there, we continue to strive to put our subject matter experts in front of our teachers and our administrators every opportunity we get. If I'm not mistaken, this one here, it put Mr. McIntosh in front of our folks trying to learn a little bit more about co-teaching and what that looks like in each of our classrooms, helping to make sure that we're meeting the needs of all of our students in the least restrictive environment, which is in that content-rich classroom. Top right picture, I'll highlight and want to say kudos to our SIL partners. Our ISSs and community superintendents came back from that ISS summit, charged up, recharged, and just really committed to coaching and helping to support teachers all across the Pacific West. So thank you for that. I thought that that was a really good event. We look forward to the ongoing support. All right, let's go to the next slide.
About the metabolic.
Our local team will highlight the picture of the bottom left. Our local teams continue to participate in job fairs and career fairs across the installations, both in Korea and Guam. We're always in pursuit of great people who are willing to substitute or serve as support staff, and always as certified teachers. Sometimes we are very fortunate and find out that we have individuals that are on site that are certified to teach. And that's always a win-win. We don't have to wait for somebody to PCS in, and we happen to find them right here on site, our local installations. Additionally, it's a great way for us to continue to put our military spouses to work, and it just continues to support our students and our families. So love that team that continues to get out there and beat the bushes and look for great folks that are hiding in our midst. And finally, the bottom right picture there is just an illustration of the ongoing efforts that we're making to partner with our local public schools to strengthen our partnership between our host nation and then also us as DODEA. We've already had several of the local administrators as well as students come in and walk schools and get to visit and see what we have going on here. We've been out and about and seen some schools, and I just think that it continues to foster wonderful relationships between us and then our host nation. If we can go to the next slide, highlighting just a few successes. I didn't want to put them on a list because I think there's so many. Ms. Rapp already talked about pre-K. Something else I would, again, attribute to our SAC teams. School events and the addition of school events, I think, has been a kudos to our SAC team members for bringing up different ideas. Additionally, I think we've worked on changing how we communicate with our parents, trying to meet them where they're at. We've had an ongoing opportunity for open communication and to allow for parents to share with us concerns that they have, and then us to react and respond to those. We've been able to see changes when it comes to adding or adjusting our traffic flow for pickup and drop off. And then finally, the example that Ms. Rapp brought up earlier about adding crosswalks or signage. That's an example we saw right here in the Pacific West. Obviously, we didn't fix it, but we pitched it over to IAC, and our installations were able to work through those and take care of it. And that was just an absolute wonderful opportunity for them to step up and help serve our kids too. Finally, a couple of the items that were raised that we're bringing up here, they've all been addressed. I've got to say thank you for the early withdrawal comments earlier, Ms. Rapp, and for pitching that up, the chain of command. Also, dual enrollment, it's my understanding that's already been sent up. And then finally, that standardized annual survey. We know and understand that that stakeholder feedback survey is something that's going to be done on an annual basis. So that's all I have coming from the Pacific West this morning. Pending any questions.
So thank you, Dr. Sherwood. I will add a comment on the dual enrollment. I actually spoke to Dr. Narvez about this week. This had been elevated to the deck, and our headquarters did a presentation at the deck about what we currently do for dual enrollment, because we do allow it now. And it's coordinated through our schools. There are some parameters around that. And I shared with her, I thought that this would be elevated again. And she said, well, we already did a presentation. And I said, that's not the intent. The intent is parents want it paid for, which it is paid for in many public schools in many states. So I did tell her, I said, I believe some of our military may be bringing this up to the deck again. And obviously this is going to be something in my mind, similar to universal pre-K. You know, we may have to ask several times. And I think it's going to take the right audience and the right interest from the undersecretary to say, you know, yes, we see this as something that, you know, could also be a recruiting tool for families to know that this option is available at no cost to families. So I think now she is very clear on what is the request, if you will. So I'm hopeful that we'll hear more about that at the deck. And also, just as I talk to some of our senior leaders, I encourage them that their voice can be heard at the deck. And I know I talked with General Iverson at OSAN. I've talked with General Widener at Humphreys. But USFK, USFJ, all those folks have a seat around the table. And it is their opportunity, even if it's not an agenda item, they can bring it up if it's something their stakeholders in their regions have asked for. The difficulty with the deck, and just to be honest, is because it's a worldwide meeting for the Pacific, it tends to be in the middle of our night, anywhere from 11 p.m. to 1 a.m. So, but we are encouraging our stakeholders out here, as well as our leads in Indo-PACOM, to participate so that our voices are heard. One other thing I will mention, I talked earlier about our new director, Dr. Narvez. One of her goals right now is to try to visit all of the schools across Dodea, to which there are 164. She has already been in all of our Pacific schools just in her previous role as the Chief of Center for Instructional Leadership. However, we have invited her back. Of course, she's always welcome. She is going to be visiting here in Okinawa the last week in May. So Dr. Hayes and I will be hosting her here. And then she will be going up to Korea and will be the keynote speaker for Humphreys High School graduation, and will also attend Osan Middle High School graduation. So during that visit to Korea, I know Mr. Arnold's on the call. We'll be reaching out to you to make sure that we get her scheduled to meet with our senior leaders with USFK. So looking forward to her return visit in her new official capacity over to the peninsula and also down here to Okinawa. Thank you, Dr. Sherwood. Next slide. Okay, now we're going to turn to Dr. Hayes with the Pacific South update. Melissa?
Hi, good morning. It's always great to share the great things going on in Pacific South. We did add an extra slide, but I'll be brief, I promise. So if you'll go on to the next slide. We've had an opportunity already to talk about the Far East events, particularly with JRTC. I'm just proud of our teams here at Kadena and Kugasaki High School. Both of our schools are on the Platinum Honor Roll for AP, which is absolutely phenomenal. Last year we had 1 gold and 1 platinum. This year both platinum, which is great. I want to continue to highlight our student-to-student programs, our transition programs. Just a brief slide here or a picture of Kugasaki High School, Kadena High School, I'm sorry, and how they work that transition program between students. It's an excellent way at both of our schools, actually all of our schools, as we provide transition assistance and mentoring to our new students. So really excited about that. And in terms of student excellence, great things going on in our elementary schools. One example of the students at EC Killen that participated in the annual 24 Math Challenge. So I could go on and on with a list of events and things that are happening in our schools, but those are just a few examples of our student excellence things that are happening here in PAC South. If you'll go to the next slide. For talent excellence, I really want to highlight the talented group of our teacher leaders here in PAC South who have just finished our 3rd annual Parent Academy. We had over 100 participants in our Parent Academy. Just very briefly, it's a one-day event for all of our parents here on island. We have sessions for parents to choose from at all levels of education, elementary, middle, and high school. This year we had a theme of fully engaged, and we talked a lot about what it means to be fully engaged as parents in our student learning, as students in learning, and as us as educators with our parents and the community in student learning. It was a great event. Thanks to our SLOs as well for helping with that and participating. It was really well received, and we had really good results from the feedback from this one, and looking forward to more to come as we continue to engage with our parents and partner with them in our student learning. As Ms. Rapp has already alluded to, and our friends in PAC West, we have our pre-K classes all ready to go. We've just added a new one at Ralph Sterling because enrollment went up. So all great success stories there. One of the things that was really exciting this year in the fall, and I look forward to possibly having the same type of event happen in the spring, is we all participated in a One Island, One Book reading event where every single student in our elementary schools had the book J.D. and the Great Barter Battle. This included things for parents to do with students at home as they either read together, read to their children, had children read to them, tasks to complete, things about comprehension, trivia things at school going on. It even concluded in many of our schools and our principals having barbers come in, and some of our principals actually had their hair cut at school just to culminate the event. Some of our kiddos had their hair cut at school. And so it was a huge community effort. And again, I'm really grateful for that, bringing us all together as a community. Again, we got a lot of great feedback about that. And I'm also excited about the MOFA events that we have going on island. These have really picked up in the last 2 years. It started out with maybe just a seed event at one of our schools, and it's moved into 2 more significant events. One is the MOFA exchange program with our teachers at Bob Hope, where Bob Hope teachers collaborated with our Japanese friends outside the gate. Those teachers came in. We talked a lot that morning about grading, about how we do school, about things that are introduced, our standards, our curriculum resources. And then the teachers had an opportunity to pair with one of the teachers at Bob Hope in the afternoon to do some co-teaching with a lesson they had already coordinated a lot on. So it was a really great event. I'm looking forward to our teachers being to go out into the Japanese schools, I believe in January, so that we can see them in their environment as well as learn from them on the way that the things that they do and how they teach. It was a great event. We've got another event coming up this Saturday where we have 20 of our own students, 20 Japanese students getting together to celebrate Thanksgiving with a traditional Thanksgiving meal and to be able to decorate ornaments for Christmas. Those ornaments will go back to the artisan down in American Village, and she'll fire them up in her kiln. And then on December the 7th, our groups come back together for a celebration of hanging the ornaments on a tree, having some hot chocolate and cookies. If you can imagine hot chocolate on a tropical island, it's going to happen, and some Christmas caroling. And it's just a great way to celebrate those community student events that are happening. So I'm really excited about all of those great things that are happening with MOFA. here on the island. And next slide. I also wanted you to see how we celebrate our talent excellence when it comes to our administrators. We had a great week of Principal Appreciation Week. There was something different every day for our principals. I believe they felt the love and the support and were greatly appreciated. I have here a picture of our last principal to join us for this year. Deborah Connolly is our new admin team member over at Miyuki Middle School. All of our principals are in place. We have a fairly new group of principals here in Pac South over the last 2 years. Really excited about that. And on Veterans Day, we also got to honor those that work with us who are former veterans and served and are now serving still our WDIA Connected students. If you'll go to the next slide. Then these next two slides I'll go over very quickly, but in our SAC process, we wanted to streamline the process just a bit, but also make sure that we address the concerns coming from the SACs to the ODAC. As Ms. Rapp mentioned, we have ODAC here on island. That's our term for IAC, where we have the installation partners come in. So in that process, we've asked our schools to talk about their successes when it comes to things that have happened that they've addressed at SAC, and then some of their successes when it comes to their schools and what they celebrate, and then whether or not they have something to elevate to SAC, which as the schools present, they get to address those three things. And then that brings an awareness to everybody. And if you go to the next slide, what it did for us is just really create a systematic way of going through ODAC. And this is another slide from Lester Middle School. Some of the things that came up at their SAC meeting, some of the things that they are celebrating in terms of student achievement, and then whether or not they have something to elevate to SAC. So it's been a great process as we enter into that new way of sort of streamlining things, but making sure that we address concerns adequately, and that we hear from everybody. So pending any questions, that's all I have from Pac South today.
Thank you, Dr. Hayes. I will just as a side note, as Dr. Hayes referred to our MOFA events, those are the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. Those are supported by our Japanese partners in the ministry. They support financially as well as with human resources, and we are very appreciative of that. And those projects not only are here in Okinawa, but also in mainland Japan, and some look a little bit different. I mean, they are designed to really meet the culture and climate of the area to which they're located. So just want to make sure that we are extending our thank yous to our partners in the ministry, in the SOFA division, that have been supporting us with these projects. All right, next slide. All right, now we're going to Dr. Ferguson in Pacific East. Jackie?
Good morning. I'm going to give some quick highlights from Pacific East if we'll go to the next slide. We are also excited about our honor roll status, as Ms. Rapp mentioned. I would also like to take this opportunity to thank, again, as Ms. Rapp said, the Misawa Command and their support with the generators and the additional air conditioning this August. We did not have to cancel school a single day, which was amazing. And I also want to give a shout out to the Yokosuka community. We had to do at least 3 major shifts in this community to offer pre-kindergarten to this installation. And the community, while it always wasn't pleasant, it was a bit disruptive, but they were very supportive and very understanding of the opportunity we were going to provide these families and these children. So thank you for just making that all happen. I also want to highlight that based on requests that actually didn't come from SAC, but they were parent requests from students as well regarding needing their class rank and their cumulative GPA a little earlier than their final transcript, as early as even the summer between their junior and senior year. And so we were able to raise that concern with headquarters, and they reviewed the issue and have provided a process by which every student will receive a letter that has their cumulative GPA and their class rank in time for their college applications and their scholarship applications. So we were excited about that. And as Ms. Rapp mentioned, we have a variety of partnerships with our Ministry of Foreign Affairs across our 7 installations. And many times those involve cultural exchanges, practicing their language. So we piloted last April at Yokota Air Base a middle school sports exchange to give our middle school students some opportunities. We had wonderful volunteers come out to teach flag football to the Japanese kids. And then of course, we refined our skills with basketball. That's always a big hit. And there will be many other highlights that I know our SLOs will cover. But in addition, we hosted a secondary AVID summit this week to support our goal of increased student engagement and student-centered learning at the secondary level. And AVID stands for Advancement by Individual Determination. So the participants, which included administrators and classroom teachers, experienced a variety of high-quality engagement techniques, and were making immediate connections to simple adjustments that they can make in their classrooms and their schools that will benefit all students. Next slide, please. So specific SAC requests that have led to positive changes in our communities include the items listed on this slide, and we truly appreciate the advocacy, the open communication, and the willingness to collaborate at the local level, because it produces immediate, high-quality, positive results for our students and families. And in Pacific East, where we have 7 very different installations and work with all 4 branches, we know it's not always a one-size-fits-all, so we appreciate all of those local efforts. Next slide. I also, in relation to the last slide, but we don't have to go back, is I want to thank the Region Office for supporting our pilot of the mock trial experience for our Pacific East schools as an academic activity that they will get to experience. We have 7 lawyers here at CFA that support that and prep the students, run the actual mock trial. So we appreciate the region's support in making that happen and allowing the teams to come together and do that face-to-face. But listed on this slide are the open items from our district advisory council. Ms. Rapp has already spoken to middle school sports, so we are continuing to explore local partnerships outside the gate at each installation and are coordinating with the Ministry of Foreign Affairs on that. The other open item is that additional counselor for our Navy schools, but Ms. Rapp has briefed that and we are just anxiously awaiting the MOU. There were 3 items from our advisory council that have gone up to headquarters level and we're waiting a response. DODEA had a working group to discuss how to address weighted honors credits for kids coming into our schools from stateside schools who had honors courses that may or may not have been weighted. And right now we don't accept the weight. I know that committee had 3 COAs, but we have not received a final response on that. I also know that Ms. Rapp has been advocating for the substitute pay to be addressed, and I believe that headquarters is working with the Office of Personnel Management on that. We've seen a lot of improvements with our musical instruments and the tracking of those instruments, so we'll just continue to monitor that as well and provide feedback. We're also encouraging our schools to leverage their local resources. So here at Yokosuka, I happen to be at Yokosuka today, so a lot of quick reference to this installation, but they have the Navy band. So could they partner with them on maybe some minor repairs that could be done without us having to ship it? And we also want to thank the region for the purchase of brand new instruments for our schools. That was greatly needed and we appreciate that. And then finally, we have, as you referenced in our stakeholder feedback survey, there are concerns about DODEA's policy in identifying and addressing bullying within our schools. So locally, we have reviewed the administrative instruction. We've talked to our principals about sharing their philosophy, sharing definitions. How are we teaching positive behaviors, reinforcing positive behaviors? How do we work through progressive discipline? And really, how do we collaborate as a community for what behaviors as a community do we want to see, and how do we teach those behaviors? And then the feedback that we are getting, we're sharing that with headquarters. So that's going to be an ongoing monitoring for us here in the district. That is all I have, pending any questions.
Thank you, Dr. Ferguson. Next slide. All right, so now we're going to go through some of our highlights from our school liaison officers. So with that, Okinawa, who's,
Hi.
that one's you, Christine? All right,
yes,
Ms.
ma'am.
McNeese.
I'm Christine McNeese, the U.S. Army Garrison Okinawa School Liaison Officer. For today's highlight, I wanted to share an educators training that we offered our middle and high schools and our teen centers here in Okinawa. This was a joint effort by our DODEA PAC South leadership and our principals, our SLO military program across all branches and the Congressional Medal of Honor Society. We did this last year. We tested it out with Leicester Middle School and it was well received. So we implemented to the other schools here. It's a one-day training. It's based on the character values of our Medal of Honor recipients. It teaches teachers how to incorporate them in their already existing curriculums. Our teachers already have a lot on their plate on what they have to accomplish. And this training and the resources that they provide is made to implement these resources in any school setting, whether it be in the classroom, as a tool for school campus culture. I've heard some teachers even brainstorm to say, hey, how can we put this in our disciplinary measures? Can we incorporate some character lessons when we're going out into those spaces? And so you see the numbers there on how many attendees, how many schools, team centers. And I want to emphasize the costs. This didn't cost Dodea or our Garrison or our CYS a dime. This was 100% funded by the Congressional Medal of Honor Society. The living recipients, they go out and they fundraise, and they wanted to take this money and give it back to our kids. And so this is one way they're giving back to our community. I do have a video that the Congressional Medal of Honor Society shared. It's only about a minute long, but I think that if you see and experience some of the content, it may be something that you want to implement within your community. So it's just a minute long. So, and then pending any questions.
Yeah, stop sharing for you.
You don't have to don a uniform for service or sacrifice. Yeah. I just happened to wear one
So I just wanted a brief video just so that you could experience what kind of content that is presented for this training. And it's two components. One is the actual character development component. The other is citizen honors. So they do have a program where you can nominate a civilian, whether they be a youth or an adult, to be recognized for some of the things that they do for the community. If you're interested in having this at your school or in your community, please reach out to me and I'll connect you with my POC at the society. They're really interested in providing this for our DoD. Thank you.
So Ms. McNeese, I want to thank you for this presentation. And one of the things when I was in Korea, I did share this with our leadership team there. This fits very nicely in with the slide I shared with everyone earlier about resiliency and how do we build in that resiliency and those core values of our military members. So I think it's also an excellent training. I know Dr. Hayes found it very helpful for her folks. And I think, again, Korea is looking at this as a possible vehicle they may want to use as well. So just want to thank you for sharing this and supporting this in the Okinawa community. And I think it is going to grow. So thank you.
And one more comment, this is not for everybody. You may have an educator that says, hey, this is great content, but I don't know how to implement it with what I already have. At minimum, this is a powerful military cultural training, just to remind our teachers that we're here for a greater mission. And so if you're out there and you're saying, okay, well, I don't want to give my teacher an extra thing to do, it is a great training tool to learn a little bit more about our military.
Thank you. All right, next slide. All right. We have Air Force School Liaison from OSAN.
So actually, ma'am, I have.
Are you free? Are you?
I'm just,
So you're April today?
I'm April and Josh and Chris and myself today, so.
Okay, all right.
So-
You're wearing many hats.
yeah,
Thank
so-
you, Robert.
So we want to put all our Air Force slides together, so, here, over in Osan, they had a visit from our PACAF A1 team. They visited, some of the programs there in the schools, there in Osan. And then, that's a middle picture there, and then on the picture to the left is actually our new program that's been going through with the Air Force. It's been around for the Navy for a while, but the Air Force started funding this program, which is Anchor for Life. And their Osan School, their elementary, had their first training. And they were able to receive the training to have them kids be ambassadors to their program and help new students that come into the school receive peer-to-peer mentoring and support so they can adjust to a new school. So, and of course, everybody's gone over the AP honor roll. Not to say the highlight again, but there's also an awesome thing to make sure that all schools are at that type of level for most part for that. Pacific. So, all right, next slide. All right, then we have Dakota. Now we're at Dakota, Mr. Josh there. He got the student ambassador boot camp. Definitely a great resource with Josh running that program, helping support, mentor those young kids to be great ambassadors to their middle schools and high school. Great program that they started there. Helped also to include some of the things they did for October was bullying, bullying awareness month and bullying prevention month. And they did a second annual walk against bullying on their campuses. And so the leadership came out there, and of course the students all around, and they make sure they bring awareness about bullying and make sure that culture of kindness is spread throughout all the students there at the school. So, and next one. And next we have Misawa, and over there at Candace, our school liaison there, talk about some of the programs they did in their first year trying to get a homecoming parade. So, great initiative to get that back to Misawa to have the installation support homecoming and have the students walk in the parade, and actually had a flyover by one of the F-16s for that event. So kudos to the installation and kudos to all the folks that took part in helping make it a successful event. And of course, all our schools, we had our ringing the bell ceremonies where we have our leadership. I mean, help students, start the new school year on a positive note. And they had her wing commander came and spoke at one of the schools there at LaSalle. So. All right, next. And last but not least, of course, we have, Kadia there. And we have, had of course, during Fire Prevention Week, we had our, fire department go to all the schools on Kadena and, do activities, bring out the fire truck, bring out Sparky, do a little, entertainment for the kids. We had our KDAP and security forces do briefings, to all the middle schools, high schools, and of course, and the AIS had, them come and talk about, how to be good, citizens when it comes to installation and when it comes to, off base and how they represent the US wherever they go here in Japan. And then kicked off Red Ribbon Week at Bob Hope in the middle there, where we had a giant ceremony at the end of the school where we brought some of the Kadena drug demand reduction program came over and gave out some prizes and helped the kids find out a little bit more about what it means to be drug awareness and protect themselves and being safe. And then, of course, once again, we started, the Air Force is now, because Kadena and Foster are so intertwined, the Air Force has decided to fund some of our Aim for Life programs at the middle schools, at Leicester, where they did retraining, and then we're looking at doing Kumasaki High School and Killing, UC Killing. We'll have those programs next year for Aim for Life to help bring more peer-to-peer programs to the schools. And of course, we also did our ringing and the bell ceremonies at all the schools on Kadena. Great way to start off the year. And that's it for the Air Force.
So I want to thank you, Mr. Chance, and another big shout out too, for the Pacific region, we require all of our schools to have a really systematic transition program. And the core of all those programs are our students, and that's where we're referring to the peer ambassadors. And they are the ones that are really working to welcome new students in and then to also help students as they leave. And we know that our military children at times will move 10 times more than their same age peer in the US. And so this is a way to help ensure, again, with that resiliency, to help our students make those transitions. And one of the things with the federal government, we're so well resourced, but there's certain things we can't pay for. You know, we can't pay for food. We cannot pay for things like, you know, logoed shirts or bags or cups or whatever. And our school liaison officers have just really stepped it up across all of our areas and helping to support those transition programs, whether it be something like the boot camp that Mr. Fly does at Yokota. I know here Mr. Chance has used and Ms. Mizell has used parts of their budget to support things for the transition programs, but those programs are successful much in part due to the support that we get from our school liaison officers, but also from our spouses clubs and other private orgs that we have on the installations that do reach out and support. So thanks to everyone for your help with those programs. We do believe they make a difference for our students. Next slide. So do we have Ms. Butler? Is she online to brief? Not Butler, Ms. Mizell, I'm sorry.
Yes,
I saw
I'm
Butler
here.
on the slide. Thank you, Diana.
You're welcome. Hello, everybody. It's evening here. I was going to say good evening. So my name's Diana Mizell, Marine Corps Base Butler School Liaison Officer. I'm going to give a few highlights for the Marine Corps bases here in Okinawa. First slide there is the opening of the school year. And I picked these 3 pictures. I actually have 4 other schools where we had commanders, but I just thought this was funny because everybody had their hand up and and we're celebrating and having a good time. We also had Colonel Bach at Kinzer, and we had Colonel Meter at Sergeant Major Lopez and Colonel Meter at Ryukyu. So you know, we had them spread thin, but I have a lot of great DVs that step up and go where they need to go. Next slide, please. All right, so we've talked a lot about community support, and Ms. Rapp's talked a lot about the partnerships and how we're helping our students. And one of the things that is a reoccurring topic is our students' mental health, their social and emotional welfare. And so I just wanted to highlight some things that are starting to happen throughout the community, specifically for our teens. And this, of course, is mostly through MCCS, the libraries, the auto hobby shops, everything else, their business ops. And they're doing all of these things specifically to or for our teens in different areas of interest, right? So we have students that love to work on their cars, students, that love to go bowling or want to work on this stop motion boot camp, which is like videoing. And then, of course, classes specific for anger management and stress. Our community is involved when they hear of a need. They get creative in how to think of helping them. So I wanted to highlight all the things that they do for our teens specifically right now. Next slide, please. And that includes the Marine Thrift Store. So this is the third year now that the Marine Corps thrift shop here on Camp Foster for Marine Corps Base Butler has started all 13 schools on this island with the PTO Starter Fund. They're generous. It's not an ask. They just reach out to me at the start of every school year and say, hey, we need every PTO at the school's point of contact. And they write them a check and the PTO comes and picks it up, and that's how they start their year off with the fund. So I just wanted to highlight all of the partnerships that go on for our students. Next slide, please. Marine Corps Base Butler, Sergeant Major Anderson, Colonel Walker also did student expectation briefs. They go over, being a good citizen here in Okinawa, what is expected of them. It's not really a strict discipline. It's, we're all in this together and we want you guys to be good ambassadors when you're outside the gate and inside the school and around the community. And then over on the left is Colonel Walker and Sergeant Major Anderson doing the coin toss at the homecoming game between Kubasaki and Kadena. Next slide, please. Oh, okay, so I'm done, but wait, I wanted to discuss a few things, Ms. Rapp, that you said that we could kind of bring up, and it might just be open forum. I see Dr. Thrower there, and I also see Ms. Hall there, so discussion can continue there in the Pacific. But I had one question with the sorry, I've been taking notes. With your college acceptances, you had a slide that said 723 college acceptances. And I don't need this answer today. It can just be an email to me. But my question is, what is that percentage? What are the number of graduates and what is that percentage for those college acceptances? And then the other thing I'd like to elevate, or at least start a discussion on, is the extra duty contracts and that budgeting. So I know that it was raised at the SAC. I wasn't there. I've been in the States for quite a while. I actually come back on Friday. But I know that there's been a budget cut in extra duty clubs, and still in the continuing discussion of social and emotional and mental welfare. I'm asking specifically for middle and high school. You spoke a little bit about using those to coordinate sports with outside activities, but yet I still believe that that budget has been cut. And so at Kubasaki, if I'm not mistaken, I think they went from 13 after school activity clubs or activities to 3. So I just have a question, maybe just a follow up. It doesn't have to be here, something that can be elevated or discussed a little bit. But I do believe that that also has an impact.
So Diana, let me address that here in this forum. So there hasn't been a budget cut. In fact, we were increased with the budget. We had a year-long committee that got together and did a study of all of the extra duty assignments and clubs that was standardized across the entire Pacific. So we weren't having situations where one football coach was paid one amount of money and one was paid a different amount of money. So there actually is more money in the pot. And we've really given the schools more autonomy as to what it is they want to offer. So it works through the superintendent to where, you know, here is the pot of money. Here's how we standardize the after-school activities, which there's sure way more than 3. But probably maybe Diana, I'm going to refer you also to, when you get back, to meet with Dr. Hayes, and she can talk to you a little bit about that process and what's actually available. You know, my comment about the extra duty assignments was, again, at all of our schools, not just high schools, but, you know, for PK-12, they have a pot of money for extra duty assignments, and they actually have the opportunity to request that money through their district office. And there is some autonomy available. So let's say at, you know, some of our elementaries, we have a taiko drumming club to where there's after duty pay for a sponsor for that. But not every school wants to offer it. So then schools have some autonomy to decide, well, what is it they'd like to offer? Maybe one school has the taiko drumming club and the other one has a jump rope club because they have a passion for that or student interest. So they're really driven by student interest. But all of those pots of money or those different clubs or sports teams are funded out of that. So that's what's funding your football coach, your basketball coach, your baseball coach, your, you know, your Far East drama coach. All of those activities are funded out of that after school duty assignment pot of money. So again, actually the pot of money was increased. And so as we standardized all of those different ones, and then schools then work with their superintendents to request there's something in addition that they want, then they can make a request to their superintendent for that. And then looking at what they have budgeted, then they make some decisions. So the particular example I gave was just simply, we already pay for those advisors or coaches, if you will, for the middle school. And that's based on interest. So if the middle school wants to have a basketball club, they request that. And then the takeaway was at the middle school, if there's an interest in that, since we already pay for that sponsor or coach, they could in fact coordinate with youth sports to do some additional competitions for middle school, but that money is already set aside. So I think probably, Diana, just some additional conversation with Dr. Hayes, and maybe in coordination with your principals there at Camp Butler can be helpful. And also, Diana, just wanted to do a shout out. Congratulations on the new grandbaby. I know that's one of the reasons you're back in the States. So congratulations on that, and we'll look forward to your return back on island.
Thank you.
All right, so our last slide that we have, again, we've talked about how we make some decisions about what we might want to elevate up. Again, as I talked about earlier, I don't have the authority at my level or the budget to support dual enrollment at no cost to families. So we have elevated that to our headquarters. Dr. Narvez is expecting that. And I think now has a better understanding that it's really about the reimbursement. It's not about what does DODEA currently offer. So hopefully that will be on the DEC agenda. And again, if it's not on the specific agenda, it can be brought up when they go around the room with the different general officers and flag officers that sit at that table. So just also encourage you, I know with USFK, that's an issue that they have elevated through INDOPACOM. But make sure you have a spokesperson too that is willing to also champion that particular initiative. I will make one other comment. As I mentioned earlier, this is the first time that we've done a live stream of this meeting, because there's been some questions about, well, what do you do at the RAC? Also, online, we have copies of the minutes. We have copies of the slides. Is the live stream going to be available as a Yeah, so it's a recording, right?
The actual.
We're gonna record this
Right.
meeting.
This meeting will be recorded as well, so all of that is available to our stakeholders. So there's nothing that prevents our individual SACs, if they have an interest to, at one of their meetings, have a topic, what happened at the RAC? You know, share the slides and, you know, have any discussion that you think might be pertinent. We know we can never over communicate, you know, we can always do more to make sure we get the word out. Next slide. So with that, we have our final slide, which is a thank you, but I want to be able to go around the horn here just to see if anyone else has any other topics or items that they want to elevate at this time. First, we'll go to the room here with our live audience. Anything in addition that we need to bring up today? No. All right, from our virtual audience, from our members, anything else that you want to bring up as topics either for today or something to bring up at our next meeting? Or something you would like me to elevate to headquarters? All right, well, seeing nothing at this time, that doesn't mean it's your only opportunity. You know, if something comes to mind later on, please don't hesitate to reach out to me. Let me know and I will make sure I get back with you or to any of our superintendents or SLOs that are online. I see Ms.
Yes.
Grice has her
Yes,
hand
Jean.
raised.
Yes, Jean.
I don't have a question or anything to bring up, but I did want to
Oh.
add to. I'm sorry. I did want to add one critical comment that I think is critical, of course, to the highlight that Ms. Rapp mentioned with the Navy providing at all of the Navy schools a social worker or a counselor to work with our students and to at the school level. One of the reasons that came about is because all of the schools pretty much have MFLAGs, but MFLAGs can the military family life counselors can only work with one-on-one with active duty students. And one advantage of this initiative is that at the school, these counselors can work with all students, either individually or in a group. And I just wanted to share that as an additional highlight. And if it's already been said, I apologize. I'm joining in from my phone, so I couldn't hear everything.
Now, thank you for sharing that, Jean, and you're absolutely right. One of the things that I brought up in our coordination with our Navy partners right away was, would they have the ability to support all students? Because we know even at our Navy affiliated schools, we have students from all branches of service as well as civilian students. So again, Navy very graciously said, no, we are here to support all students. So that will certainly be a bonus at our middle schools and high schools where we will have that program. Thank you, Jean. Anything else from the group? Well, seeing nothing further, again, thank you to our live audience here today. Thank you to our folks that participated online. And again, please don't hesitate. If you have issues or concerns that need to be brought forward, we exist only to serve our schools and our students. So please don't hesitate to reach out and let us know how we can help. Thanks, everybody. Have a wonderful holiday. That's going to be here with us next week and enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you. Bye-bye.